big sparks flying in New York. First of all, you hear helicopters outside, traffic is stopped. Why? Because Donald Trump decided to attend his New York civil fraud trial here in New York in front of Judge Arthur N. Goron. And this is the case being brought by Letitia James for his sweeping, lifelong fraud in his businesses. And today were summations, and Donald Trump didn't have to attend, but he decided to. And as you know, he picks and chooses which court cases he goes to. He didn't go to the E. Jean Carroll rape trial, civil rape trial, or defamation trial. And there's another one starting next week. Let's see if he actually attends that one. But he clearly cares about this one so much that he even asked if he could give part of the summation. And the judge said, sure, under certain conditions, if you promise to stick to the law and the facts and just make arguments about that. This isn't a speech. This isn't a campaign rally. You have to stick to the law and stick to the facts. You don't even get to testify. Trump refused to agree to that. So the judge said, then you can't give summations. Last night on Legal AF, we discussed it. I said I could see the judge changing his mind and doing a game time change and letting Trump actually speak today. And that ended up playing out. Trump did speak, and he did exactly what Judge Engoron told him not to do, which is to give a speech. And then, of course, Engoron cut him off at the end. But Trump got to do what he wanted to do and say what he wanted to say. But let's talk about what happened today. So it starts in the morning with a bomb scare. Basically, Judge Engoron got swatted like others have been. Jack Smith, Tanya Chutkin, and many, many others. It's been widely reported about all the death threats, et cetera. And here in the tri-state area in New Jersey, there was a federal judge who a couple of years ago tragically had somebody come and murder her son, and it was somebody that she had overseen his case. I mean, these are real. These threats are real. These are public servants, and Judge Engoron is no different. And that should not have happened. It turned out all it did was cause some delay, but it's just outrageous, this violence that the MAGA supporters of Trump engage in. But after the bomb threat, they go to court and they start with the summations. Chris Kise gave the summation on behalf of Donald Trump. And I was wondering whether Trump has lost faith in his lawyers, which is why he wanted to give part of the summation. I don't know. It's just very unusual. Your lawyers are supposed to represent you and give your facts and argue how the facts don't fit the law, et cetera. And that's why you hire a lawyer. So why does Trump think he wanted to give and gave part of his summation? I don't understand. Anyhow, Chris Kise gave the summation, and he started it, frankly, I thought, again, with another threat to Judge Engoron. It was kind of a veiled threat, but he says, this is your legacy. This is precedent. He's making it personal about Judge Engoron. And even though it's a bench trial and no jury, which means that Judge Engoron is going to be making the decision in this case, it's still not personal. It's the court. The court hears the evidence. The court applies the law to the facts. And the court doesn't just take what anyone says and just kind of listens to it. They actually do their job. They look at the record. They only look at admissible evidence, et cetera. And so he personalizes it and says, this is your legacy. This is your precedent. I don't know. That just, to me, that's very much in line with the dog whistle threatening type of language that Trump and his supporters engage in. It's like it's sending a message to the followers to to engage in violence, because that's what keeps happening, especially today after Chris Kise knew that Judge Engoron had this this bomb threat at his house. He should have known, and he should have made an effort to actually not personalize this, because it's not personal. And Judge Engoron, this is not personal with Letitia James. It's not personal with Judge Engoron. It's just not how these things work. And even if you have personal feelings about a particular defendant or plaintiff, courts and juries, they can put that aside, and they have to follow the facts wherever they lead and apply the lot of the facts. And if the burden of proof isn't there, then you acquit. And if so, you can find a person liable or convict. So I just didn't care for how Chris Kise did that, that he was making it personal. And his summation there was no big surprises today in his summation. And let's just remember, just really quick, let's set the table about what summations are. Defendant goes first, and because there's multiple defendants, they've all been given an opportunity to speak. And the word summation is the same as a closing argument, and that's what was happening today. And then the Attorney General will go after all of the defense summations. Well, Chris Kise went on, who represents Trump, said that the Attorney General didn't rebut the testimony of two experts who said that Mar-a-Lago was undervalued and could be used as a private residence. But Engoron did something unusual, which shows this is a bench trial, where he interrupted the summation and says, yes, it wasn't rebutted, but I also don't have to accept the testimony as true if I don't find it credible. And he interrupted him several times to push back on things like whether or not $2 billion is material or significant in the case. Kise said that Deutsche Bank would have still loaned the money to Trump after independently verifying his Trump's values, and then adjusted his net worth by $2 billion, but said it's not material to the bank. And then Engoron said, well, that's not logically correct. And then they went back and forth on what the standard of materiality is. Is it objective or subjective? Meaning, did it have to be material to Deutsche Bank, or did it have to or is it objective? Meaning, would it be material, generally speaking, to banks generally? And so they went back and forth. But what was sort of interesting about it, because again, Engoron then went on to say he didn't credit the hired gun expert from NYU, Mr. Bartov, who testified. And what was interesting about it is it felt like more of an appellate argument, where there's a hot bench, as they say, and the judges are asking questions of the lawyers. That is not typical of a summation. Summations are usually, the judge doesn't say anything other than if a party objects, and then to a particular part of the summation, and then the judge will, one way or another, sustain, overrule, etc. But it was much more of a back and forth conversation between the judge and the lawyers, which again, as I said, is not usual, not typically done except in a bench trial, which this is, meaning there's no jury there, that you can be much more lenient and do things differently. And so and you could just be more flexible, because you don't have to worry about anything tainting the jury pool, which is something you always have to worry about if you have a jury. So they went back and forth about the money amount and disgorgement and whether or not there has to be a harm to a third party in order to receive, to disgorge money, etc. And but it was a short-ish summation, I would say, given how long the trial has been. And then Alina Habba also came up and gave a very animated summation, and said this is a victimless fraud, and if human error is fraud, then the whole state of New York is screwed. I was so surprised by that language. You're an officer of the court. I would never speak to a court or a judge like that. I would never use that term. But she speaks very, informally, I guess is the way I would put it. So she did her usual Alina Habba word salad of histrionics that don't really make any points. And then Clifford Robert spoke on behalf of Don Jr. and Eric. And he followed up on this paperwork error argument and said, basically, he pointed out that the Assistant Attorney General, Kevin Wallace, who's the lead lawyer for the Attorney General's office on this case, had a paperwork error, but that shouldn't lead to disbarment or having a salary taken away. And he went on and on about how not one witness said that Eric or Don Jr. are anything but peripheral. And I was like, oh, wow, what a statement about these losers who are just peripheral and have nothing to do with the business, but whatever. And then he lashes out at Engoron and says, says things about Engoron as well. As did Alina Habba, by the way. She also lashed out at Judge Engoron and accused the Attorney General and the judge of being part of a political agenda. And she also went after Michael Cohen, predictably. I know I'm going a little bit out of order, but I'm just remembering things in my mind about these summations. And so it ended, though, with Donald Trump, which was the big crescendo to the defense summations, and predictably, because as I said, I thought that Engoron would allow him to speak because it's less strict, because it's not a jury trial. It's also not federal court, which is very, very formal. State court is just much less formal, and so Engoron allowed him to speak. Trump completely contradicted his lawyers, though. Right after Clifford Robert and Alina Habba said that, if everyone, they made errors, they made mistakes, and pointed out that Kevin Wallace made a mistake and said that the whole state of New York makes mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. Trump stands up and says, my annual financial statements were perfect. So he's basically saying they're perfect. No one made any mistakes. So he contradicted them. And he then says there wasn't any witnesses against me. This was a political witch hunt, and this will have dire repercussions on real estate in New York, et cetera, et cetera. And he just kind of went on and on. Things came off the rails. And, he said they have nothing. The only thing they have is the triplex. Okay, that was a mistake. It's the one place he concedes there was a mistake. But he says the dollar amount's not that far off. I'm an innocent man. I've been politically persecuted. The statute is vicious. What happened here is a fraud. The amount of taxes I have paid over the period is close to $300 million. They don't want me here anymore. I have a problem. They want to make sure I don't run again. He just went on, and Engoron didn't interrupt him, which I think was a smart thing to do. But then he went and attacked Letitia James, accused her of election interference, that she has her own agenda. She was in the room, by the way, and angrily says to Judge Engoron, you can't even listen for more than 1 minute, and basically accused him of not paying attention and not listening. At that point, Engoron basically said to Chris Kice, control your client, which is a typical thing for a judge to say to a lawyer. Trump nonetheless went on and on about Letitia James and went after her again. And then Engoron finally fed up, shut it down, and ended the day of defense summations. They broke for lunch, and then will come the Attorney General's summation. And then the judge will go back and deliberate. He could rule today. I mean, that's what would happen if there was a jury. They'd wait for the jury's deliberations, or he could take time and decide to render a verdict another time. It could be in writing. It could just be oral. So we'll see what he chooses to do. But stay tuned. That's what happened today in the New York Attorney General civil fraud case. I'm Karen Friedman Agnifilo with Legal AF. Join me every Wednesday and Friday with my co-hosts Ben Meiselas and Michael Popok.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.